Hi all of you awesome scuba divers out there, welcome to Scuba Diver Magazine, your favourite place for the latest scuba diving news and gear reviews. A couple of weeks ago I made a video on how to properly remove and replace your BCD inflator that you can watch up here, but you can take it one step further if you have one of these, which is commonly known as a K-valve or a power inflator. So the good thing about these fellas is that you can actually service them yourself with some pretty basic tools and a service kit, which just consists of a few little O-rings. That way, if your inflator is creeping and like constantly inflating your BCD, or if it's been, you know, a couple of years since it's been properly looked at on the inside, you can actually replace those O-rings and make it just like new. Unlike a proprietary inflator that you just cannot open up, if you get some grit somewhere where it shouldn't be, you have to take that to your dealer to either pull it apart or replace the entire thing. With one of these, you can do it yourself, usually on the dive site. Now, I have to say that it's best if you do have any problems with your power inflator, it's best to get it looked at by a trained professional so that they can repair or replace. That's always going to be safer and better to get it like properly serviced at a dive center. But yeah, let's look at how to pull these apart. Now, there are a few designs of these power inflators. This one's missing the inflator because I broke it. So you do have to be a little bit careful because they come from different brands. So when you open yours up, it may look a little bit different to the one that I'm pulling apart. The basics are kind of there, and I've tried to cover all of the tools that you'll need depending on the different style, but you might have another design to mine that you only really notice once you've actually opened it up, and you might need some extra tools. So I apologize for that. I'm going to do the best that I can. As far as tools, you do need a fairly specific tool, which looks like this, or this O-shaped tool specifically. These like inflator multi-tools, they're pretty cheap. They're nice and small, so they do fit quite nicely in your Save a Dive kit. Just search for power inflator tool online or ask for one at your local dive center. They'll know what you mean, and they should get you something similar to this. If you're in a pinch, you basically need to rotate this metal ring around the inflate button that has these two little notches kind of cut into it. It's easiest with the correct tool because you have these two corresponding notches to be able to rotate it. But if you do have something appropriate that will do that same job, then as long as you're careful not to like slip and damage your inflator, you could use that, but this is always going to be better. So if you don't have one and you've got a K-style inflator, it's worth investing in one of these. A small adjustable spanner is quite useful. These tools do have a couple standard size hexes, but they're not always perfect. So yeah, an adjustable or a set of fixed spanners. A pair of mole grips is quite useful, and a section of nylon as well, because those mole grips are basically there to hold onto the button and you don't want to damage the button itself. That can be quite useful. Flathead screwdriver, fairly big sized. That's only essential if you're pulling apart the purge button. You don't often need to do the purge button, and it's quite fiddly. They're pretty basic compared to the actual inflate side, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if you do need to, and you look on the inside and you see a hex nut, if you do have a socket that will fit in there, perfect, use that. If not, you can kind of get away with a flathead screwdriver. An O-ring pick is always quite useful, unless you've got very nimble fingers and decent nails. And a firm but gentle hand is quite useful, because it's unlikely that your inflator is going to look brand new on the inside as if you just bought it. You're going to come across some hard to move things. That's how I actually broke this inflator, because it's got a little nut on one side, and actually I think this was the flathead one. Yeah, this has a little flathead, and yeah, I just rotated it a bit too much. It's marine grade brass, so it just broke. If you're giving your inflator a once over, a bath of water with a dash of acid like vinegar is going to help break up sort of any like contaminants that get on the inside. An old toothbrush as well, give it a little bit of a scrub, or at least a toothbrush that you don't intend to use in your mouth ever again. And some silicone grease is always quite nice just to lubricate those O-rings. Okay, so let's pull this apart. I've gone for the grubbiest inflator because realistically, unlike some other videos, your inflator probably isn't going to be as pristine and brand new as if it's just come straight out of a box. It's probably going to have some verdigris on it, maybe some salt crystals. Yeah. First things first, the easiest thing to remove is the silicone mouthpiece for the oral inflate. You can take that off, just give that a quick scrub, a good once over, have a look down the mouthpiece. If you can get your toothbrush in there, give that a clean, probably afterwards, but yeah, just have a look for any kind of obstructions. Then we're just going to take the inflator nozzle off. So if you do have the right size hex on the multi-tool, then that. If not, you have to go for your trusty adjustable, or you can probably get a socket over that. Undo that, you'll have an O-ring around here, or at least you should have an O-ring around here. And you can take that off. You don't really need an O-ring pick for this. You can just use your nails. And then, again, quick visual inspection, just look for any kind of contaminants, anything blocking anything, and have a look inside, because the gas is going to come in through here. You get the pressure coming in here, and then we're going to look at that inflation section that controls where the pressure goes. Now we're going around this ring around the inflator, and you just want to line up those two lugs and just rotate it. Firm but gentle but firm. You want to make sure that they don't slip at any point, so you're always kind of pushing it inwards and rotating it. And yeah, you'll need to give it a good few rotations before you'll be able to undo it by hand. If you just try and rotate the inflation button itself, you're just rotating it on the spring. It's not really doing anything. You have to rotate the actual metal body. Then it comes free. So basically how it works is your gas is going to come in through that nozzle from the hose, and it's pretty unrestricted from that point. It comes into this middle chamber. You see we have these two black O-rings. Then we have the gas pressure inside of here. You have this little hole in the actual body itself. There's sometimes one on the other side, but there isn't on this model, and that puts that gas pressure on the inside. And then when I disassemble it, you've got two further internal O-rings, and whenever you push the button, it basically moves this piston and it just relocates those dynamic O-rings and allows some gas to slip into the inflator body itself and then up through the corrugated hose into your BCD. At this point, if you want to, you can remove these O-rings. Just use your O-ring pick, or if you're pretty good at doing it just with your hands, you can do that. I prefer an O-ring pick just because it's a bit more accurate, and it's typically made out of a soft metal as well, so it's less likely to scratch the chrome. Now this section you can use an adjustable or even a fixed. From memory, it's a 1/4 inch. Yeah, God bless the imperial system. Yeah, so you can use a socket or a spanner. I find sockets a little bit easier because it's easier just to apply pressure and or apply force, and we're rotating the purge button the inflate button, and you'll probably see it unscrewing. You have a little spring, keep hold of that, the button itself, and then pop that piston out. And yeah, you have those two little O-rings, so have a visual of them, and you can just remove them with a pick. If you're using a pick, do your best not to actually stab the O-ring or yourself for obvious reasons. The O-ring, because sometimes it might be perfectly fine and worth keeping in like an emergency box, just to have some emergency O-rings in case you you use the replacement O-rings and then something else goes wrong. So it's just nice to have some emergencies, even if they're not brand new. Cool, finally get them off. They are pretty tough. Again, as with everything, just give it a visual just to check that it's all right. Have a look around the bodywork. There's a little, you probably can't see it on the camera, but there's a little kind of build up on there. So I'd go at that with my toothbrush and just clean up that verdigris. At the moment, it's not going to be affecting the performance of the inflator, but down the line, I don't want it to. So it's best just to sort of get it as shiny and clean as possible. Moving on to reassembly, ultimately you would have cleaned your, I mean this for example, it's got a decent coating of verdigris that I'd like to clean up. I don't have the time today, so I'll do that a little bit later. Yeah, but it's basically the same but in reverse. So get the little piston and one of the O-rings. Now I like to give them a little bit of a greasing just so that they're smooth. Just kind of a very light coating. You don't need a lot of grease. And then feed that on. So these are pretty tough, these little O-rings, and when you put them on, he's probably going to sit in the first position, and it's going to be tough to get it over that little flange and then get it into the second. So I just put the second one over the top of that O-ring instead of struggling to get that first O-ring. Very light coating, nothing overly fancy, and then thread it over. Yeah, they're quite chunky and they're very small, so they do put up quite a fight. Just be careful. Once you get it over that first O-ring, that's usually the hardest part. The O-rings themselves, they're tough, but they're surprisingly stretchy. You do just have to be careful not to damage them for obvious reasons. Pop that in. If it's the other way round, and you've got that flat head, you go in from the other side, get your spring, get your button, and you're going to line up those threads and just apply, you're basically squeezing that spring in whilst rotating the button, and that should pull it into place. When you see that the nut or the piston starts to rotate, just fit it onto your socket and tighten it up. And that feels pretty good, and just make sure it's about as proud as it was when you took it off. Then a couple more O-rings, make sure you get the right ones. So the large chunky one, give a little bit of grease so it seats and seals a bit better. Pop that over the bodywork, over those threads, and then over this flange. And then that smaller one goes into position. Right, then back into the body, just finger tight, and then we're using a multi-tool to tighten that up. And it's kind of like regulator hoses, you're just screwing it up finger tight, and then just an extra little oomph just so that it doesn't unscrew itself accidentally. Check for function again, get your inflator, one more O-ring, pop that in place, screw that in, tighten it up, extra little nudge on that, and then once the mouthpiece is back on, it should be back to fully functioning. But what you do want to do, especially before you go for a dive, is connect it to a low pressure inflator and yeah, just test for functionality. Make sure it inflates, make sure it stops inflating, and it just acts as you expect it to. It's not creeping, so just give it a listen whilst it's connected, and yeah, just check for that functionality. So if your inflator has seen too many seasons and not enough baths, then you'll need to contend with verdigris and salt, among other contaminants, wherever you're being diving. So do be careful. Make sure that the tool that you're using is properly seated and properly sized, especially adjustable spanners, because they can wobble a bit loose and you don't want to strip a nut. And you're dealing with plastic and chrome plated brass, which is quite a soft metal, so you're going to scratch it very quickly if you slip. So just take your time, don't rush into anything, and just consider where like the pointy ends are going, so you're not going to scratch the bodywork. If you do have one of these inflators, it's best to give it a proper once over, probably once every year, maybe every 2 years, because O-ring technology is a little bit better than it used to be. If you're in the water very often, like once a week, then increase that schedule maybe once every 6 months or so. It's better to find an O-ring is wearing on your workbench here than 30 meters underwater. If there's anything else that you'd like me to pull apart, then by all means let me know down in the comments below. I'm not going to go into too much detail with some equipment, especially like regulators and things that should really be serviced by a professional. You need to throw some work to your local dive center from time to time and might keep them in business. Otherwise, you only have one weekend before the British Go Diving Show. There's going to be links down in the description where you can buy tickets. I'm going to be there filming, so feel free to say hello. And I'm sorry if I hit you with my tripod when I'm moving around. There's lots of people, so I'll do my best not to hit you with a tripod. Otherwise, remember to check out our website, scubadivingmag.com, and subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.